Khalil Jacobs would make the Ole Miss defense as explosive as the Lane Kiffin offense.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Thank you very much for joining me. Today on the show, we talk about Khalil Jacobs visiting Ole Miss, and Pete Golding is doing a little bit of transfer work, and this linebacker is twitchy to the level the defense could take a step or two with this player. We talk about all the chatter we heard out there about other familiar names. ESPN and Fox has given their week 0 and week 1 plans, and to no surprise, it's heavy SEC even on Fox. And the NCAA NIL conversation, I sat around and tried to figure out how these cases would affect my football or me, or if people were just reacting to react. How would regular fans be affected by this NIL stuff if it goes through when the school gets involved? This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available in all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you very much for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. The week of the 4th of July, July 2nd, I'm planning on having a meet and greet somewhere in the I-20 corridor around Jackson, Mississippi, maybe Madison, maybe Flowood. We'll see exactly how that goes, but stay locked on here to find out more about that. And there's still time to join the Grove Collective and help Ole Miss football go to the top. You can go to thegrovecollective.com and join today. All right, so Ole Miss is getting a visit from Khalil Jacobs from South Alabama. We talked about him earlier on in the week. This is Zach Berry's tweet where it says South Carolina linebacker Khalil Jacobs will start his official visit at Ole Miss on Tuesday in 2023. The 6'2", 225 linebacker prospect finished with 56 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 8.5, and 3 forced fumbles with an interception. This is a twitchy type linebacker. He is somebody that athletically would be a nice fit to pair next to somebody like Pupal that can make this linebacker group even more explosive than they already are. And I talked about in the cold open today how the addition of Khalil Jacobs would make this linebacker group potentially look like the Ole Miss offense is going to look this year. And with Jackson Dart and all the potential accolades with that unit, this would give the defense a little bit of explosivity as well. Now, you have a situation, I mean, I've talked about this pretty consistently over the last 2 or 3 weeks about hoping that the 2 interior defensive linemen can draw double teams each and every single play. Hoping that Walter Nolan and J.J. Pegues becomes an interior dominant unit that requires a double team. Both of them have the talent. I know with Princely Amanuellen and Jared Ivey, it's probably going to be a difficult type thing for people to see, but we need, as fans, J.J. Pegues to be so dominant that he requires a double team. Walter Nolan is going to do it. He's a game wrecker. But if that happens, that is how I am prefacing all of my thoughts on this subject. Khalil Jacobs next to Pupal and the openings on the single coverage on the outside where they're trying to block Princely Amanuellen and Jerry Ivey with single blocks, and you have the chance of a free rusher. Somebody this twitchy can make your defense go from, really, really good to outright scary. And it isn't a situation to where Khalil Jacobs is the talent that puts Ole Miss over the top. It's like I've talked about over and over. Ole Miss is looking to fill roles, not holes, on their team. And what this guy can do specifically, you can see that Pete Golding is doing some mad scientist type stuff and trying to figure out how to make all this work and fit together. Pete Golding, at his core, he might not admit this after 5 years under Nick Saban. He's an explosive defense person. He wants sacks. He wants turnovers. He wants big plays. And sometimes that exposes him to getting opened up. And that happened at Alabama. That happened at UTSA. Heck, that probably happened back at Southeast Louisiana and Delta State. You know, his idea of what defense is supposed to be just fits that way. This is a player that makes this defense explosive. Think about this situation, okay? Let's just talk about this situation right now. You have to double team Walter Nolan and JJ Pegues. That's 4 out of your 5, let's say 6 offensive linemen, because we're going to count on the fact that the H-back tight end is going to have to be held in to block, and it's going to be necessary because of the double teams that are required. Not requiring those double teams, it makes it a little easier to block. But if you can force teams to respect you in those double teams, that's going to leave Princely and Monmielen probably with an offensive tackle. They're not going to put him on a tight end. A tight end is going to get Jared Ivey. That's 4. That is just on a front 4 rush, taking 6 people to block 4. Which means if you send 5, if you send this player, Khalil Jacobs, on a blitz, he is likely going to be unblocked. And he is twitchy enough to where he is sudden. He can blow up your play. So it becomes a situation with Ole Miss that it would be 6 of one, half a dozen another. Who do you double team? Who do you leave open? Because if Ole Miss decides to bring 5, which they do a ton, you can see exactly how this could open up the offense and make it difficult to do much of anything. Khalil Jacobs playing linebacker next to somebody that can do thumper. He can do this sideline to sideline. Just a really good linebacker beside him in Chris Pupal with that defensive front in front of him. Now, all of a sudden, Ole Miss's linebacker unit matches every other unit to where it's a top 10 nationally type unit. Now, TJ Dudley, Suntaran Perkins, those guys, they're going to play some linebacker as well. Tyler Banks, yes. The transfer out of Jones County that I forgot his names at the moment, yes. Those guys are going to play linebacker this year. But you need somebody that is a specialty type player. And it'll be interesting to see exactly how that goes. Now, other players, the chatter that we've heard in the transfer portal grapevine is that another SEC school is going in to try and get Tyler Barron, but there's a problem. The school's in the Southeastern Conference, and he signed his paperwork with Ole Miss. I do not worry about the LSU Tigers being much of a threat for Tyler Barron because I don't think Ole Miss is going to release him to LSU. Not the way that went down. I think in the SEC, it's Ole Miss or bust, essentially, for Tyler Barron. But he also has options with the USC Trojans and the Miami Hurricanes if he wants to play in the Big Ten. That's so weird to talk about the Big Ten and USC, or the ACC with the Miami Hurricanes. Cormani McClain also, we've talked about him a little bit. Crystal ball got put in by Pete Nakos and those guys for the Florida Gators. The rumor is it's as a preferred walk-on, which means this is probably an NIL type deal, but it's not a full scholarship limitation or something like that. I do not know if that is correct, but if that is true, that is interesting, and that tells me that his breakup with Colorado and what went down probably wasn't as good as we realize. We'll see. There's some other players that are going to pop up over the next couple of weeks, but the big player that Ole Miss needs to watch out for right now is Khalil Jacobs. This is an elite level G5 linebacker. Putting him next to Chris Paul, that gives you some flexibility and different ways to attack teams. They're not two of the same type players. Their contrast would work together with that front 4 that Ole Miss has developed on the defensive line. Those two linebackers together could be special, man. They could be really, really special. And it's just because of the potential of what they could do. Now, we could have a situation to where it's probably not going to happen, But you get a Khalil Jacobs, and all of a sudden Pete Golding doesn't blitz him or something like that. Although I don't think something like that would happen. But there's always that possibility that it just gets used incorrectly. But if I can see how of a perfect contrast fit he would be with Chris Paul, surely Pete Golding can as well. Surely Brian Brown can as well. Surely Randall Joyner can as well. I've watched a lot of football video in my day. I'm not going to pretend to act like I know more than they do. Now, I might second guess what they do, but I'm not going to say, hey, if I see it, odds are they have. I'm not going to say that I've picked out something that's completely special and different and things like that. But that's the chatter going around the transfer portal this Wednesday morning. First of all, Khalil Jacobs on Ole Miss's campus, at least he was yesterday. He has to reschedule visits. He has not done it yet. He has to reschedule visits with the Missouri Tigers and the Alabama Crimson Tide. His former head coach is the defensive coordinator for the Alabama Crimson Tide. That's something to pay attention to. I like where Ole Miss sits right now because he canceled those 2 visits to visit Ole Miss. So maybe there's a pull with Yam Banks. I'm not saying this is guaranteed one way or another, but it looks pretty good. Anytime a player visits Ole Miss, it's 50-50 that Ole Miss lands him. It's just the way it is right now. So thank you very much for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. Football TV listings are finally coming out for week 0 and week 1. And believe you me, it is SEC heavy. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They have superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today then. A free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you each and every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single day. So some week 0 and week 1 TV listings, they're popping up and it's amazing. And I got so excited when I saw those. I was like, hey, I need to talk about those tomorrow. So we are, and we're going to start out with the fact here that Notre Dame and Texas A&M has been selected for the week 1 College Gameday down in College Station, Texas. So Texas A&M, Notre Dame, that's going to be a big contest. Mike Elko, Marcus Freeman coming together. It's going to be a really physical football game. This is going to be our first look at a Connor Wegman football team coached by Tim Elko. It'll be really interesting stuff, but it's the College Gameday game, and it will be the first week where ESPN and Disney has the sole rights to everything. So we'll get an idea of how everything's going to look, which has me pretty excited about that. If you look at the games that day, I mean, you go back on that Thursday, North Dakota State is at Colorado, which, you know, Colorado deserves what they're going to get by scheduling that game potentially. But Saturday, Clemson at a neutral site in Atlanta, Georgia. I almost said at Georgia, taking on Georgia at 11 a.m. The Miami, Florida is at Florida at 2:30 on ABC. And Notre Dame is at Texas A&M that night. If you look at the primetime listings, Sunday has USC and LSU. Are you detecting a theme right now? And Monday is going to be Boston College and Florida State. They're also opening up. College Gameday is going to be in Ireland the week before as they play a college football game over there between Florida State and Georgia Tech. I'm a rambling wreck from Georgia Tech and a hell of an engineer. Yes, Georgia Tech. Now, if you look at the Fox listings, the Big Noon kickoff and Big Noon Saturday is at Michigan for the Texas-Michigan game on September 7th. And on September 14th, they're in Madison, Wisconsin at the Alabama at Wisconsin game. It doesn't matter where they are. The SEC is the draw right now in college football, and even Fox understands that. If Fox could get their hands on the SEC rights, they absolutely would, because SEC is the juggernaut in college football. Now, Ole Miss versus Furman, that's SEC Network Plus. We know exactly how it's going to go. It might be on the SEC Network that day because of so many games being on ABC and such. So I do not expect anything great from the turnaround. But Ole Miss in their first 4 games, they play Furman, they play Middle Tennessee State, they play Wake Forest, and they play Georgia Southern, just back to back to back to back. Expect the SEC Network, or maybe like an ESPNU or something like that, because now that Disney owns all the rights, there's some changes that everybody's going to need to get ready to see. And part of that is staggered kickoff times. And it doesn't really affect. The 11 a.m. that you saw is the ESPN kickoff. They're going to do that. But the SEC Network is probably going to be somewhere like around 11:30, so that there's SEC football on throughout the day on the ABC family of networks. So you're going to have several things going on that you can flip back and forth and catch SEC football all through the day, including the SEC kickoff game moving back to like 7 or 7:30. So we'll see exactly how that goes. I'm pretty excited. I'm curious to what Ole Miss and Georgia, Ole Miss and Oklahoma, Ole Miss and LSU, they're going to sit. I want to see if the Ole Miss State game is on Thanksgiving. There's rumors right now that it's going to stay on Thanksgiving. I still think Texas and Texas A&M are eventually going to be that game. But, Ole Miss and State, they might change it up, for lack of a better word. Maybe Ole Miss just that fulfills the contract or something like that for Thanksgiving night. But we'll see exactly how that goes. I'm pretty excited. We'll have an idea after week 1, what Georgia looks like. If they roll Clemson, which I think Clemson's going to be a decent team, I don't think they're going to be an elite team. So Georgia should probably beat Clemson by a couple of touchdowns. If they don't, that's probably a sign of what could possibly happen. Alabama going up to Madison, Wisconsin to take on the Wisconsin Badgers. Texas going up to the Big House to take care of Michigan potentially. We will have an idea of where the SEC sits right off the beginning. Now, a couple of the elite teams, and it's going to be absolutely weird to talk about the SEC elite and mention these two broadcasts and these two teams. The Ole Miss Rebels, we're not going to know about them until the last weekend of September. We're not going to know about the Missouri Tigers until a little bit into the season with them. Last season, the SEC got the narrative of being down because Ole Miss and Missouri were the teams that Tennessee and LSU normally are. So I know we're going to have people rushing to judgment. Yes, I understand that we're going to have narratives that start in week 0, and we try to push those through as much as we can. But we probably need to be a little bit patient this year. Like Tennessee and Nico Iamaleava, they have a chance to be pretty good. We're not going to know that until they play Alabama, they play Georgia, somewhere in there, because we're not going to learn anything from them playing the lower tier teams in the SEC. Like Tennessee and South Carolina is not going to tell us anything. So we'll see. I'm pretty fired up. Honestly, you can hear it in the tone of my voice. I am really fired up because the fact that we're getting TV listings means it's close. I ordered my Lindy's magazine today. I've ordered my Phil Steele already. And once we start magazine season, we've got a month until we get ready for SEC Media Days, and then it's go. It is go time. We have about 60 days, 2 months, to where we have filler time. And we have the transfer portal that's going to help us out a little bit. But every now and then we're going to have shows about Jackson Dart's Heisman odds. Jackson Dart will lead Ole Miss to a New Year's Six bowl. Jackson Dart will take Ole Miss to the playoff. Lane Kiffin is the best Ole Miss coach since Johnny Vaught. Those type of shows have to be able to happen. And it's the off season. It's talking season. People mention that for a reason. But we will see how this goes. All I know is, hey, I'm thankful for Khalil Jacobs, and I hope there's a couple of more transfers that kind of get circulated through over the next couple of weeks. And also we have camp season, so you'll have players that commit during June as well. We'll have Brian Smith to talk about transfers, and we'll have him talk about high school recruits as this moves on, as official visit season starts. Like Mario Nash is supposed to be in Oxford, I think June 7th or something like that. So everybody pay attention to all of that, but it should be a lot of fun. I'm very, very excited about just having TV listings and to kind of make this real right now. Anyway, thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. I am racking my brain to try and see how a potential revenue sharing settlement affects me as much as some people wants it to. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which means it makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it is to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. They have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection. They have the best customer service in the business. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available in the Amazon Fire TV app in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available in the free Fire TV channels app. Be part of history. So, I've been sitting here on Twitter and on social media like everybody else, and everybody just is like, they're wringing their hands about potential NIL and all of that stuff. So I wanted to sit down and think, how does this affect me as a general football fan any more than I am affected in 2008 or right now? And as right now, it would be beneficial if the schools would take on this revenue sharing stuff and the Grove Collective just kind of becomes an avenue for people to replace the Ole Miss Spirit and Rebel Grove and Inside the Rebels and take that money and just kind of redirect it into the NIL fund. That would be a situation to where football as a regular fan, it would be better. And everybody's going to talk about, well, if Ole Miss has to pay $20 million a year in revenue sharing, that price is going to be shifted over to the consumer. So ticket prices will be a little bit higher, concessions will be a little bit higher and stuff like that. And yet that's probably true. But the reality of it is, when I was the video coordinator at Ole Miss, our total athletic budget was $30 million. And that was in 2006. That's 17 years ago. We were at $30 million. And then the explosion happened with TV rights to where Ole Miss started banking money to the point where they're now the athletic budget somewhere around $110 million, $120 million. Was that a 400% increase of the athletic budget in 17 years? So we realize that Ole Miss football can function on $20 million less than that. So anybody is going to tell me that, hey, the athletic department is struggling or something like that because of our athletic budget going from $110 million to $90 million, as somebody that had to deal with the athletic budget being $30 million, pardon me while I don't bite on that. Now, I understand the collective is still going to be a thing, and we still have to donate to the collective, but we do not have to overly donate to Ole Miss football. They're going to tell us all this stuff matters because they want to redirect the cost to you. $20 million going to the players, it makes sense. It just makes sense. And the school doing the actual heavy lifting in regards to college athletes, yes, it makes all the sense in the world. Whenever you can do things that are a little bit, I don't know, different in that revenue sharing model, it makes sense, as opposed to the fan base being responsible for every bit of the heavy lifting involved in football. Like I said, I talk all the time. Ole Miss, the poorest state in the United States of America. Income capita, whatever you want to look at, there's not a lot of money. Right now, people are working hard to contribute $20 and $30 to the NIL collective because they are hungry for a winner. But the moment that Ole Miss throws up a 6-6, that collective money is going to be harder to come by. That's just the way this is going to work. If you want to see what an uninspired fan base and how they're trying to do it, look at what's going on at Mississippi State right now. If you look at that and you compare that to what's going on at Ole Miss, it's the same people, it's the same fan base. So if you want to see what a 6-6 season will do to the NIL collective, look at what's going on at Mississippi State. Ole Miss needs some revenue sharing to set a floor for what they can do. And if you put a cap on that of $20 million, great, as an avenue for the collective to find people to sign. But they're still going to need the monthly memberships. They just are. The $20 memberships that I talk about on this show, that is going to be a thing. But at the end of the day, how much is this going to affect me as a football fan? At the end of the day, if the revenue sharing goes through to where Ole Miss is due $20 million a year, and the answer is it isn't going to affect me. Now, like I said, Ole Miss is going to probably raise ticket prices. They're probably going to raise concessions. But you know what they're not going to raise? The price of how much it costs to watch a game on the SEC network or ESPN or ABC. So that stick is also going to be there to keep Ole Miss from raising prices too much. Because at a certain level, fans are just going to kind of take their ball and go home and watch it on TV, which is an unbelievable experience right now in this HD 4K world. So at the end of the day, I don't think general fans need to worry about what's going on in the NIL space, other than the fact that it needs to happen. The settlement needs to happen to take some of the burden off of random fans. And after that, you just kind of get back to watching football the way you always have. The enjoyment is always going to be there. And, once you take out the drama of this whole NIL situation and look at how it would actually affect the fan base at large, the Jimmies and the Joes, so to speak, it just isn't. Your involvement in the collective will be your choice. But if it goes down because of that revenue sharing, we're not at a terrible level. It will be a great parity type situation as well. Interesting stuff. like I said, it's just one of those things that it may not mean that much for every fan, but my enjoyment personally won't be affected at all. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen. We have the most perspective surrounding Ole Miss sports, and it's one of the many reasons why we are the number one Ole Miss podcast out there. And thank you for that. This week's top 5 topic will be the top Egg Bowl games and moments. We talked to Brad Logan last night. We've talked to Dalen Flowers. So that is interesting stuff. Your second listen needs to be Locked On Sports Today. They've launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available in the free Fire TV Channels app. And for those of you on YouTube, we'll send you there right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.